Hi, I'm Chris Cohen, and welcome to another edition of the Apt To Game Show, recorded in front of a live studio audience.
Yeah!
We're here at the Apt To Game store in Edmonton, Canada, where I'll be talking to a pair of local game designers who are going to tell us how they used Kickstarter to bring their latest board game creations to print. David Papp is an Edmonton tech expert, speaker, engineer, author, and the owner of Microtech Web Design and Marketing. He has 4 crowdfunding projects, including a Bluetooth rocket launching app, Uber Stacks, a board game accessory, and his latest 5, King's Court, a quick set-building card game that spans a multitude of genres. Over here we have Luke Seinen. He's one half of the husband and wife graphics and web design team at SAS Creative, also in Edmonton. Together they designed the game Carthage, based on a game idea dreamed up by Luke. Carthage is a deck-building board game featuring gladiatorial arena combat and was just recently funded. Thanks for coming, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
Come on. Applause. Yeah. Crystal. Thank you.
Okay. You went too far.
He actually has fans. Snip. We'll cut the... No, I'm kidding. So, when you first heard of crowdfunding, what were your thoughts? Like, this was years ago when crowdfunding started to become this phenomenon. I'll ask Luke first. What did you think?
I think I was just into board games, so then I was like, there's lots of sweet new things coming out here, so I just got into it, looking regularly at what's popular, what is actually funding, right? And then I was once I kind of came up with some ideas or had the dream to make a game, then I was like, this is definitely doable here, I think.
So did you back it? You backed a few games?
Yeah.
And you just like the process? Or?
Yeah, totally. It's just a cool creative process to be involved in somebody else's project and dream as well.
What about you? When you first came across crowdfunding, you're pretty internet savvy. You would have...
Well, I mean, it was an interesting thing to tap into, crowdsourcing. But at me, it was the marketing aspect I was hoping for, to be able to have that awareness of people out there. It's like, okay, so you got a product now. And generally speaking, sometimes, getting some money is not a big deal for an idea, but it's then who's going to buy it? Who are you marketing it to, right? And that was it. And when I started with my first one, Kickstarter wasn't available in Canada, so I went the Indiegogo route for my first one. Yeah.
So for you, it was a 2 birds with 1 stone thing. Not only were you kind of getting some money to fund it, but you were at the same time marketing it to your potential customers.
That's what I thought. Yep.
It's like the idea of pre-sales a little bit. Yeah.
Exactly.
What? Speaking of the other crowdfunding options, Indiegogo you went with. Why didn't you stick with Indiegogo?
Because I felt that Kickstarter was kind of the brand recognition. It's like the Kleenex of tissue papers. So I wanted to go at something that if you said, hey, I'm running a Kickstarter, you didn't have to explain it. But if you say, I'm running an Indiegogo, what's that? Like, I have no... You almost had to explain that it's crowdfunding. Well, what's crowdfunding? But if you said it's a Kickstarter, it didn't matter. Even if they didn't know what crowdfunding was, you didn't have to explain it because they've heard of Kickstarter.
So the name, that cachet, that instant recognition.
Yeah,
was a big part
and that's
of
what I was playing on. That's why I did my next 3 campaigns on Kickstarter.
Okay, and did you ever consider any other thing other than Kickstarter?
No. Well, I mean, the community, especially for board games, is on Kickstarter, right? Like, there's people that have channels and blogs just about what games are coming out on Kickstarter, right? Like, it's like the place to go if you're aspiring to design and publish a board game.
So what did you do to prepare then? Once you had your you had your game idea locked down, I guess, and then now it's time to secure funding? Was that how you went?
I think essentially, I mean, like what David said is like you're looking to see Kickstarter is awesome because you can gauge interest before you really have to invest money to create a product, right? So like if you're like, I'm going to do this only if I get this many people that are actually going to buy the game. So then you're putting a lot of time forward in marketing and creating content, but you're not putting money towards manufacturing unless you have that crowd behind you that wants to buy the game essentially, right?
But it seems to me like a lot of people think that Kickstarter is kind of this democratization of making it easier for anybody to produce some sort of thing like a game or a product or whatever. But it's not that simple. You don't just kind of fly by the seat of your pants with it unless you maybe have something really amazing that is just going to sell itself, I guess, right? I mean, what did you guys do to really prepare for before the actual Kickstarter came out? What was the process before that? Because I'm guessing it takes a lot of marketing leading up to that point, even.
Well, what you soon learn the hard way as you do your campaigns, and what I put all my energy into my latest one was you trying to create a hype, I call it the Snowball Effect. So what happens is it's online marketing. You have to make sure just because you have a campaign listed on Kickstarter doesn't mean anybody's going to find it. It's not going to show up. You need it to trend and to show up on the discovery tool. In order for it to show up on Kickstarter's discovery tool, they need to see that you've actually driven some direct campaign pledges to your Kickstarter campaign. And in order to do that, you have to have a list. So you're basically working before, even if that's family and friends, saying, look, when I launch this thing, I'm going to send you my campaign list, and I want you to pledge on the first 24 hours, because the first 24 hours are key in order to, it's the first 24 and the last 24. Those are the most important. The stuff in between, whatever. Basically, you're going to see your pledges go like this. They're going to drive and dot down, and then they're going to pick up a bit at the end. That's what all campaigns look like. And so to do that, to get this snowball going, you have people that are going to commit. And I was even begging for $1 pledges. Honestly, I just wanted to get people to back it, to show that there were backers. And then if you can actually key it so that you hit your goal, and we can talk about that later, that's a whole other strategy, then you can say fund it. And there are some people who, even though when you go on Kickstarter, you're pledging for something that might not happen, it's not a guarantee, it's not a sale.
No.
It's I will give you a reward for your pledge if we can hit our goal and if everything goes right. Yeah. But there are some people that still see it as I'm buying something and here's the delivery date, in which case when something's funded, the psychology changes. And if you can have that happen early on in the campaign, then you can get that snowball to continue. And you are pushing literally the whole time. If you got a 30-day campaign, you are pushing for 30 days, plus all the stuff that you did before that.
Yeah. So you funded on day 2 or 3, so that must have created that psychological confidence maybe for the rest of your campaign with
I would agree with David in the sense like you really need people ready to back as soon as you launch, because nobody wants to be like number 10 backer, right?
No.
When they're like you're just some random person looking on Kickstarter is not going to back if there's only 3 other backers, right? So I mean, like I got email lists, I begged family and friends, I had couple different strategies where it was like only 15 people can back at this one pledge level, so that right away there was people jumping on board, so that it would show to everybody else that it was like, this is something that I need to get on board. I mean, I do it all the time. I go on Kickstarter, I look at like what's being the most backed, and I instantly feel that like childhood peer pressure to jump on board and back it as well, because it's like there's 10,000 people backing that project. It's got to be good,
Yeah.
I the only things I've ever funded would have been stuff that's already been funded, and I get in on the late backer pledges for CMON generally, and I kind of luck out to get in on something like that. But for me, I'm not quite that early adopter. I really do need to see that funded thing. I'm not going to take as much of a chance, I guess, on something that's been... I mean, I guess it is that thing, you're taking a chance on something, even though you still are once it's complete, because like you said, you're not necessarily buying a product, you're buying into something that if everything goes according to plan. So I guess it's fair to say then that Kickstarter, once the campaign window has closed there's a lot of lead up to that. It's not just get your idea, put out some Kickstarter info and just let it go and rake in the money, It's a lot more work to it then. Yeah,
no, there's a huge amount of work there, absolutely. And the other thing to keep in mind is that if you fund within the first 24 hours, you know the money is going to come. You now have like your timetable has been established, and you can put things into motion right at that point. Like you can begin discussing with a factory and even putting a deposit on it to begin manufacturing process, because you know that it actually is going to happen now.
Yeah, and what stage are you at right now with Carthage? Because you're planning on fulfilling around March.
Yeah, so we are creating our first prototype at the manufacturer in China. So we're like, once it's done, it's going to be sent to me. Then I'm going to approve, and then we'll start like full production.
So at what point during the campaign then did you start, like David was saying, already making those connections?
Yeah. So I mean, prior to the campaign, I already had 2 different manufacturers lined up, depending on how much we were going to produce, right? Different price points and how many you're going to make, that kind of stuff, right? As the campaign went on, we added more stretch goals. So then I had to extend the time it would take me to get to manufacture, because we had more graphic design, more artwork to do. Some of that kind of work needed to be done after the campaign was done, because we unlocked some more things that wasn't exactly expecting from the campaign. But I think you need to have a lot of ducks in a row before you start the campaign, because people are going to ask you questions like about what you're manufacturing, what's the quality of your cards, what size is this, what size is that. It's I think
everything.
And everything that you don't have prepared that comes to light from somebody asking you a question just is like one more notch in you not looking professional, not looking prepared, and then getting cancellations.
And it's the psychology again, I guess. So yeah, because people think once you're funded, oh, terrific, but there is a cancellation thing. Not only do you have to worry about getting to your funding goals, you had both spoken about cancellations. How much did that factor into your bottom line, I guess, getting, say, 5 to come to life here? How much was the cancellation on that?
It's constant. It's something on all my campaigns that to be expected. I would say it's an easy 20-30%.
Really?
Yeah, but you also can do creative things, and which is a whole other strategy on marketing to get people to upgrade their pledges throughout the campaign.
Sorry, hang on a second. Okay, so with your latest Kickstarter, how much of a factor were cancellations? What did you say, about 20 to 30%?
Cancellations are a big factor. There's no doubt about it. And even last minute cancellations, when people realize that this thing's a reality, and I don't know if there's psychology and timing when your dates occur, like if they're next to a payday or not. Like honestly, it makes a big difference on what day of the month, what time of day. And so in this case, you have to balance that out. Like if you're just riding the line on your funding goal, you have to be careful. Like you have to surpass your funding goal in order to be assured that you are going to beat it. Yeah. But there is a strategy as well in getting people to upgrade their pledges throughout the campaign. You can release special perks, rewards that then people will go and upgrade to squeeze a bit more out of it. And that you're giving these people a fantastic deal. That's the whole point behind Kickstarters. You feeling privileged that you're not just one of the first people to get it, but you're getting a deal to get it. It's close to manufacturing cost, right? Not what retail is. And you can play on that. So one thing we did was like a triple play thing where we came out and we said you can get 3 for copies think ahead of what your Christmas gifts are going to be or whatnot, and give a copy to your family or friends. And you created it even better than what the base pledge is to increase volume, because that comes into play, because depending on what volume level you get for your print run when you're manufacturing overseas can affect your per unit cost and what things you can do. So it's all hand in hand. Like you're constantly playing with numbers on this.
But so it seems like there's a lot of psychology involved in this and that sort of thing, which is like a lot of psychology in marketing as well. So the fact that both of you are in marketing, do you think you're poised in a position a little better to make use of Kickstarter than?
Yeah, I would say that the evolution of Kickstarter is really interesting to look at, because there was, if you look at projects that funded 5 years ago and the quality of presentation and design and art in those versus projects that are funding now are like wildly different. Like people could put up like 3 pictures and type 2 paragraphs of idea and they could make $20,000 on Kickstarter. But now if you do that, you would get like 2 backers. Because that's where the community is there. There's mega corporations there. You have to be able to at least compete and present yourself professionally and visually. You need to have your ducks in a row so that people are drawn in to at least click on it and look at it for the first bit.
So you might need to actually put out a few bucks before you even
Absolutely.
get started.
100%. What people,
sweat.
what it all comes down to is in marketing we call it the sales funnel. It's you cast this net and you're trying to get them to do something at the end of it, which is pledge. We call that your call to action. And Kickstarter or any crowdfunding is basically web design, developing content, and it's a big, huge, massive, tall web page that you're creating. And you've got some graphics, some supporting graphics to show your product. Some of it most of it's concept work because you haven't actually created your product yet.
Yeah, I see a lot of 3D renders.
But people want to see what the end product is going to be. Like they don't want imagination; they want to know what they're buying.
Well, like Luke said, 2 pictures of something isn't going to do it anymore.
No, it
People are
isn't.
More in depth.
The majority of people like myself are visual anyways, and so like most Kickstarters I look at, I just look at what visually is there before I even think about reading. Most of them I just scan over any typed content, because so like with our Kickstarter we made so we had 0 text on our Kickstarter page. Well, we had text in pictures, but it was graphically designed so it looked a little bit better. It caught the eye a little bit better, laid out better than just a wall of text, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many strategies involved in the marketing aspect of a Kickstarter project, and you have to put all that, I think, in row if you really want to see your dream become successful.
But while you're making your marketing materials, you can implement some of the design you've already done, so it's not
Absolutely.
a total
Yeah,
waste.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I've seen some creative ways of making use of the of basically the Kickstarter template. Like you said, it's just a big long, almost like a Tumblr scroll of of just info. I've seen really interesting pictures with words and captions and things like that, as well as like bits of blocks of text and other things and other basic design elements. But I mean, some of these videos are getting quite
that's another
quite intense
aspect
now. I mean, I remember seeing they were some of the first people using videos. They were just holding their phone and talking. Like, dude, and maybe they put in like some inspirational, free, royalty-free music or something. But now you're getting all sorts of stuff that looks almost professionally produced. Some of it for sure.
Yeah.
But how important is it to throw a good video on there?
It's all equally important.
Yeah.
I feel like you can't have one thing and then not have other stuff, right? Like a good video is important, but also is good graphic design,
Okay, so you were saying that everything's important, all aspects, I guess, of like web design, like you had mentioned. So video and picture.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have a great video. You have to have review videos, like people reviewing your game. You have to have a crowd behind you that's going to buy the game, back right away. Like you need to have all those things. You can't just have one good thing. That's what I found. I was like, I spent hours and hours looking at campaigns that were really successful, and that was the one thing I noticed. They had everything. They didn't have just a couple good things. Like they didn't shy away from doing everything right. So then that was like my main priority, was just to make sure we didn't have this or this, because I had talked to some other even local creators here that had campaigns that failed or didn't fund, or and they were like, we should have had this, we didn't have this, we didn't have this ready. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be like, oh, I should have done that.
I'm surprised by the number of people in Edmonton. When I was doing my research to find people for Kickstarter so we could have a show like this, there were a number of board game designers, but then there's books and everything, and all sorts of products, and it's really interesting. But to get all that in a row, you basically did a lot of research of your own, and so I guess a good tip for anybody trying to get into a Kickstarter campaign would be to just scour the pages, see what they like, and I mean, everything has common elements. You're not necessarily stealing if you're just borrowing some format ideas and stuff like that. I guess
it's more a checklist, right? You're creating a checklist of what are all these things that I'm going to need, what seems to work, what's pleasing, and there's a huge amount of homework. And this is not just a month before. Like this is like 6 months to a year before in the planning of working this out. I even was mocking up my Kickstarter page on a web, on a website well before that. Just what do I need? What do I need for content? What graphics am I missing? And like you're just populating this thing. And like he said, you want additional exposure, and getting additional exposure is difficult unless you've got something to show people, or a prototype or a website pre-Kickstarter that you can direct people to get those reviews and comments. And what you're really hoping for is the coveted, a thread on BGG or on Reddit. And a Reddit or a BGG, like, review videos are great and stuff on the right channels. Like Rado Runs Through did a thing on my prior campaign on Uberstacks, and I noticed instantly, like, I know when the video went published, because I'm like, oh, something just happened, and there's a spike all of a sudden, and then it dies down. Like
the Rado bump or whatever.
Exactly. And so you're really bending over backwards for trying to get these things in play.
Yeah. Do you reach out to those reviewers, or do you just hope that they...
I did. In my last campaign, I made a huge effort to.
Yeah.
How did that work out?
It was a huge amount of work, but it does work. It can pay off, yes. Not to the level that you think it will. You're not going to... You should never count on having, well, we call it the mini viral effect. That's not going to happen. Those things you can't even predict when they're going to occur. But you're hoping that somebody's going to pick it up. It's going to be another review, and you'll get another 5 or 10 people out of that. It's not going to be hundreds. It's not going to be thousands. It's literally like single digits.
And unfortunately, with the short window of a Kickstarter campaign, you don't really have this long tail effect that you can cash in on, because you've got 60 days.
Well, but if you're smart, though, when your campaign wraps up, it's funded, it's live, you change that link right away that says pledge, and you can direct that for pre-sales on an e-commerce website, so that you're still selling some stuff. Like, I swear, just me, I use BackerKit, and I raise easily 30% additional funds after the campaign is done on sales, pre-sales through BackerKit. Like,
BackerKit
it's a fulfillment. It's I use it instead of the Kickstarter for fulfilling my stuff. So it does the surveying. What's your what's your address? What options did you pick? Blah, blah, blah. But what the nice thing is, you can do what's called an upsell there. So you say, hey, you present them an opportunity to buy extra copies for whatever, or an extra add-on or whatever at that point, or other products that you might have had at that point. And that represents, generally speaking, a good extra 30% revenue on all of my campaigns.
Well, is there a resource other than, like we just spoke about earlier, looking at other successful campaigns and kind of checklisting what they do? Like Seinen, for instance, has checklisted, like, the things you mentioned they use for Arcadia Quest. I bought in late. I got a whole bunch of extra stuff, and also the opportunity to buy things they'd already had out for a long time now, but get a good deal on it. So maybe checking out a Seinen is a good checklist. Is there another resource out there that...
Crowdster's got some good checklists online.
The really interesting thing about Kickstarter is people use different strategies, and a lot of them pay off in different ways. So like, we can say one thing, what we did, it might not pay off for you. You could come up with something creative and it might really pay off for you, right? Like David said, he used kind of this post Kickstarter to sell additional product. I had that during my campaign. So like, I had pledge levels at like 2 copies, and then I also had like an add-on where you could get a playmat version of the game board that was a little bit bigger, and people could add on money. So I kind of sold it during the campaign, which worked really well for me. But like I'm saying, like, I think there's lots of different strategies that people use, and I think depending on what your campaign is, what your crowd is, they could be successful, they could be not. We did a stretch goal that was a social stretch goal, so people could share our campaign with a hashtag on Twitter or Facebook, and then I searched it, and once we hit 50 shares, then we unlocked a little bit more content and gave them a couple extra cards, which was really good because it got more exposure out there, right?
More exposure, plus people who've already backed you that might not want to spend another couple dollars just to hit into the stretch goal. Well, geez, if I can just share this link around with a few people.
Absolutely, right?
If I was to do another campaign, I would totally do the social goals, stretch goals, absolutely.
Well, exactly. Like, there might even be other interesting ways to do stretch goals too. I think stretch goals, to me, have also made me want to back stuff just so I can try to get them up to the next level. Like when I backed Arcadia Quest, Inferno. Wow, some of those stretch goals, you get a lot of stuff, and I think that's another psychological thing that, again, something that might work for your campaign. Maybe you don't have a lot of stretch goals for something.
Something big I want to touch on my campaigns. I did it on my third one, and it was It's a controversial topic, very controversial. Yeah, it's early birds and super early birds.
Oh, super early birds. What's the deal with that?
Well, it's an even better deal, and you stage your early birds on that. On my third crowdfunding campaign, I did the early bird thing, and on my fourth one, I did the purist view, because people think that early birds are tainted. You shouldn't do that; it's not right. But I'll tell you, I would go back now in a heartbeat on my next one. I'm doing early birds and screw it to the trolls online.
Yeah.
Because they work, because they get your snowball right away, because people realize that I need to back it right now, which then gets your funding happening quicker, which gets your trending on Kickstarter going right away. And you have to push hard to get that to happen otherwise, because if the price is just there and there's no time reason for you to do it right now, well, then I'll sit on it and I'll think about it. Maybe I'll come back next week, which they generally don't. But an early bird or super early bird feels like you're getting extra value for jumping in on that. And sure, some people left the early birds over time. It was interesting to watch what happens as they change their pledges or canceled, and immediately other people would fill those spots. So I don't know. That's just me. I think it's controversial, but honestly, I think my next one, if I were to do another, would have early birds.
Kickstarter gives you lots of different options of how you could possibly do an early bird. So
Yes.
some of them have, if you pledge within the first 48 hours, then your pledge is like $5 cheaper than maybe it would be later on, right? So say maybe it's 55, then it's 60 after the first 48 hours. So then everybody who pledges feels like they get a deal. But where the controversy comes is, if I find out your campaign 5 or 6 days later and I miss out on the early bird, I'm going to have a little bit of jealousy or frustration that I didn't get that. So then I'm going to not back it, right? Another way, I don't know if this is what you did, David, but you could just limit different pledge levels.
We did them by limits.
Yeah, so you can limit, you can say, only 100 people can pledge at this $55 range, and once it's filled, then it's 60, right?
Correct.
So in our campaign, we had a custom art option, which is another sometimes controversial thing, because people don't want other people's faces in their game. But so we had 15 of those for $150 each, and those sold out in the first 3 hours of my campaign, which created a really great snowball effect, right? And that was kind of the reason of it, right? And people canceled, and then people jumped in, and in the end they all sold no problem. But it really created that, we made lots of money the first 5 hours, right? So that there's different ways to kind of create an early bird that might not appear as an early bird, that would give some people maybe a negative feeling about it. And there's some Kickstarter horror stories about people that had early bird product and then they actually lost their funding later because it was super cheap at the beginning, and then people just wanted the deal, so they backed it, but then later on they went and read about the campaign and canceled because they're like, well, we're not too sure if we even want this game, we just backed it for the early bird, right? So there's stories about that, and
just kind of hold your place
Yeah.
before,
Exactly.
Then,
Yeah, I've done it myself.
I guess one thing you got to decide is what is your goal? Like, are you going to be satisfied with hitting your funding goal and you just want to maintain your funding goal throughout? Or do you have that dream, I call it the whale harpoon syndrome, where you're walking around and you're hoping to get the big sale, like you want it to go viral?
The strategies are different.
Strategies are different for how you want to tackle your campaign, whether you're going to put all your energy into that initial 24, 48 hours getting funded and then very minimal effort thereafter, or is it to try and stretch it out for the 30 days or whatever that your campaign is. I think it can slightly affect how you do your stretch goals, how you do your deals, what are the pledge levels? Are they time-based, quantity-based, or is it just a flat rate? You pay $20 and you get it, There's different ways of tackling that.
There's so much to it. It just makes me think that somebody who might want to start a Kickstarter campaign for their cool board game idea might seem overwhelmed. Are there people out there that manage Kickstarter campaigns and stuff? I know people will create your videos and content.
Absolutely.
It's Kickstarter's so huge now, and especially in the board game realm.
You could really make an industry.
Yeah, there is an industry supporting Kickstarter campaigns. There's Kickstarter experts that look after different projects and stuff like that, and especially
some are fee based and some of them are percentage based.
Yeah.
Do you think that's valuable, or I guess there must be.
I think it depends on your community of people around you, and if you can create something that you're happy with that you think is going to fund, or if you need support from different areas and different places, right?
Yeah, with both your backgrounds, you're probably okay to handle this yourself, unless maybe it just gets to be too stressful and you want to just hand it off to somebody or whatever. But you were telling me that this last Kickstarter had some interesting ups and downs involving like the community and you've mentioned it a couple times, trolls and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, as he indicated there, the 5 years ago is very different from today in the space. And so what you're running now is the expectation level and the bar is set very high. And people will call you out on it in your comments, the public comments on your campaign page. Yeah. And your hope is that somebody, one of your other backers, is going to go and defend you. Do you know what I mean? Honestly, because there's some bad trolls out there. Mm-hmm. But generally speaking, that's not the case. So you're on 24/7 on watching your campaign as it's evolving, even after, actually much after, and you're basically needing to address those in a very careful way and trying to have the right answers to satisfy these issues that are being identified. Like on my fourth campaign, we made it EU friendly, Canada friendly, USA friendly, with free shipping, and the price was dirt cheap to begin with, and you still get people who complain, well, how come blah, and this and that, and what's the quality of blah, and it's like, oh my gosh, like what more can I do for this? Like it costs you actually in some cases to put your product out because you're hoping to get the minimum print run, and let's say a minimum print run is like, call it 1,000 copies. Mm-hmm. So maybe your goal is that you want to sell half of those on Kickstarter to fund it. Yeah. And your profit is going to be those additional copies that you're going to sell afterwards. Yeah. So technically Kickstarter costs money. I didn't walk away with great revenue and awesome profit. I actually went in the hole. And my profit is the hopes that I'm going to be able to do future sales of those additional copies that I went and committed to.
But people still complained about the prices on stuff. I guess when you say you need to get out there and mitigate these bad comments or whatever and stuff, but it must be tough because there's people you can never please, though.
I would say, what David's talking about, what really was really if I were to give one good piece of advice for Kickstarter creator, was that I had a group, I used to be a youth worker, and so those youth are like college age students, and now, and
your perfect demographic.
I've created some board game geeks out of them, and so that group of college age students I kind of brought alongside, and I called them like our games gladiator games, so I called them the Bloodthirsties. And they we had like a Facebook group where they were basically committed to help me hype the game, get it excited,
like a street team.
Yeah, so we basically we joined all these Facebook groups and a bunch of things on Reddit, and then one of us would post. Well, I wouldn't post as a creator; they would do it all, and I was just kind of encouraging them. They would post, and then they would put the link to their post in the chat group, and then everybody else would go and like and comment on it to create an algorithm of like excitement. And so we did that post our pre-campaign, we did that during the campaign, and then also those friends of mine, they were really great on the comment section, and so I would say, oh, somebody wrote something bad, and then they would respond to it like, I played it and this is good, or I would create a discussion in the comment section after. If somebody had something that was even slightly negative, I would create a discussion about the game, and then they would comment, and it would just create a lot of comments in the section that were positive and excited about the game. And so then when somebody goes on there, they're seeing more of that than anything else. Well, and so they were really like, it was basically this team of influencers, right, that I could use online in different ways, and it was like probably the most beneficial piece to my game or success.
Well, influencer marketing is huge, but influencer marketing usually balances that line between shill and genuine fan.
Yeah.
But what you're talking about sounds like fans. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the nice thing about your group is they're all actual fans. So
Yeah.
when they're getting into it, they're not doing it for, their pennies per post or whatever.
Yeah.
They're actually getting into it because they're friends with you. They like what you're doing there.
Yeah,
Interested
absolutely.
in
And the really great thing about it was they're friends and they're excited about the campaign too. So
Yeah.
during the whole campaign, which is always stressful and
Yeah.
all this stuff, but we're doing it together and we're excited. Like I had,
Yeah.
some of them are working now and they're like, I just got in trouble because I kept going on the Kickstarter page and my boss is getting mad at me. Like they're just as excited as I am about it all, right? And
Yeah.
Well, that's great because that's nice to have a team behind you
Yeah.
or whatever, that really is helping push it.
you
Plus-
just bring them along for the journey, right? And
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about preparing for your Kickstarter, all the fun that you go through during the Kickstarter. Now you've got your money, you've got your funding, whatever it is, and begrudgingly you hand off your percentage to Kickstarter, and what you've got left now, you're putting together the game. You guys were talking about a lot of number crunching and stuff like that. So what happened once you were out the gates with 5 King's Court? What happened?
Well, to be honest, I knew I was going to hit the funding goal. I was quite fairly reasonable with it. I had set it on purpose. I had set it very low. So well before I even launched the campaign, I also know that people are very sticky on dates and they're sticky about fulfillment, what you commit to. So I was going to try something on this one to get it off my plate as quick as possible. I'd actually pre-started all that before I even launched the campaign on Kickstarter.
Okay.
Had everything ready so that my deposit basically went in those first 24 hours when we were funded. Then my deposit went in, production began, and I had on purpose done it. And if you look at my fulfillment dates on it, I was a month ahead of schedule. And I did that on purpose, and the trolls will still complain about that.
I was going to say, a month ahead, people must have been, oh, wow, awesome. But no, somebody's going to...
There were some complainers, and where's my tracking number?
Oh, yeah.
Dude, it was free shipping.
Yeah.
Like, seriously. And you got it a month before. Like, we're way ahead of the game. So I don't have to send it express post to you in Timbuktu.
It is a weird thing, though, when you get your tracking number and your...
Oh, my gosh.
Suddenly you learn about shipping and
Yeah.
cargo, and... I watched my my Kickstarters come from China, and I watched the boat on a map,
Yeah.
I got caught up in it. I never said anything nasty because I knew what I was getting into. A Kickstarter, the dates could...
We had hoped that because we were so ahead of schedule that everybody would be happy, but no, there's some you can't please. But on that note, it was very interesting because at that point you're trying to determine, well, what were my quantities? And in my case, I had to have 3 fulfillment warehouses, one in the EU, and that one is super important. If you want anybody in Europe to back your campaign, the VAT is a big freaking deal for them, like a big deal, and it is a roadblock.
It's a significant
16%.
amount.
It's massive. Yeah. So if you want to get the European backers, you have to take that into consideration, which means you're drop shipping to somewhere in the European Union of certain quantities, but I didn't want to leave extra stock there, so I wanted it to be reasonable. And you also have to take into account that some of them are going to get lost in shipment, damaged. It happens. So I had to do some reshipment. I just did it. I don't argue with people if they say they didn't get it or something's damaged. I sent another copy. I just didn't want to deal with it. It's too much, right? Exactly. But the bulk of my shipments in my case went into my US fulfillment warehouse that I still use right now for all of my sales, my actual post-production sales, retail stuff. But you're calculating all that, right? Because shipping will kill you. Shipping is more than production.
Yeah.
I say that, no word of a lie. Your shipping is more than your production, depending on the title and depending on complexity of what it is you're building, and where it's going. But it's not something to forget about. Like, it's a big deal.
Yeah. So what did you do? Tell us what you did here with 5.
Well, I was very
shipping
creative with 5. People
free.
look at it, they're like, wow, this is actually kind of genius. Why is it so small? It was on purpose. In Canada Post, if you're a creator in Canada and you want to ship something, Canada Post sucks. Like, seriously, it's either something that can go in regular mail and it's got to fit through that slot, which is exactly 2 centimeters, 20 millimeters in height. Or, if not, it becomes a small packet, and small packet jumps from $3 postage to $10 postage, just like that. And we kept it under 200 grams. That's another one. So that's why this is such a compact clamshell box that we developed is because it's 17 millimeters thick, under 200 grams, and I can put a $3 stamp on it and send it. That's how I got free shipping to be able to. Otherwise, it would have been more than the campaign reward that we would have got from people, like $10 plus, in order to fulfill this. It would have killed us. Like, honestly, it's ridiculous.
Now that you said Canada Post sucks, I you're going to lose a few more packages.
I know.
Love you, Canada Post.
But I wish there was something in between. Honestly, Canada Post is great. It will get there. I mean, I'm not trying to bash them, but I'm saying I don't like the pricing system. The pricing system jumps from $3 to immediately up to $10. There's nothing in between, and it's either it fits through the slot or it doesn't. It's over 200 grams or under 200 grams. It's too black and white.
So what are you going to do? Because your box looks like it's pretty considerable.
It's going to cost
I
money.
mean, our box is heavy. We have miniatures and boards and all that kind of stuff. Thicker cardboard from a stretch goal that I'm worried about and that kind of stuff. But David's doing a lot more post-campaign work with selling product and stuff like that. My goal is to get back into like creating and designing and somehow hand off my game or sell it to a distribution company, the extra copies. And so I'm using fulfillment centers for Canada, US, and worldwide, and the European Union. So most likely my game is just going to ship directly to those fulfillment companies, and they're going to ship it out and charge me, X. And I researched it all, I priced it all out, and it's doable. I mean, I had to lose a little bit of money here and make a little bit money on different shipping, but it's definitely something you need to be aware of, or else you might, there's some horror stories of that as well. People like going into the hole just from shipping.
But like you said, if you're getting into the design thing and hoping, I mean, this is just having a funded game that's fulfilled is an awesome portfolio.
Absolutely.
So just to paint the picture on that, if you can push out your dates when you're a creator for fulfillment, to take into consideration that it is cheaper to send things like in a sea can example on pallets. It's night and day difference from sending it through regular, courier, express, or mail. So you're basically sending pallets by sea to your fulfillment centers. So you're paying shipping once, and then you're paying shipping for the individual products for fulfillment to the end products. Like, there's a double whammy on shipping.
It just seems to me that more and more somebody should just hire somebody to take care of the whole thing unless you've got all this.
Well, you know how they have print on demand for books? I imagine one day they'll have, with 3D printing and stuff, there'll be print on demand for board games. I don't know.
Upgrade to solid cardboard.
Exactly,
Okay, so fulfillment.
Fulfillment is a big deal. And fulfillment is where a lot of people lose their shirt. That's what breaks them, because they don't take that into consideration properly. Getting to that point, getting to your campaign, getting your funds, even creating your product and doing production is one thing. The actual fulfillment can be a nightmare. You're dealing with spreadsheets of various quantities, different addresses that you're going to sort by country, by how, what they got, what their fulfillment, and then being able to track that with problems afterwards is a big deal. It's a lot of work.
So the shipping thing, there's so much to it. Is there any kind of Kickstarter thing you could do that would be just really simple and getting it out there and that kind of thing, or do you just see the
electronic fulfillment, the
I mean,
download?
there's lots of different
print and play.
Lots of different options.
Yeah, there's print and play. If something, you send them a link, they download it.
If you're really trying to go like super small potatoes, there's different companies that'll just print the game. Like, I mean, the Game Crafter, for instance, is like this indie board game design group website that you can create one game, you can create 10, right? Your cost is going to be super high, but if you want to just try it out and see, like, you can upload all the data right onto their website, and then you can just type in an address and they'll make the game, they'll ship it to whoever bought it, right? Like, I mean, there's small potatoes, there's medium potatoes, there's big potatoes.
One thing we used for prototyping, like to get our reviews and stuff.
That's another big part of the design.
Which was it's a website called makeplayingcards.com.
Oh, okay.
And to be honest, it's actually doable. Like, if you had wanted to do a small run and you didn't worry about economies of scale, like getting into like quantities of 1,000, and you just wanted to do 50 or 100 or something, I would actually seriously consider that, and you can make it work. Like,
makeplayingcards.com?
Yeah, makeplayingcards.com, and that's how we did our prototypes, and it works out. You can get the cost quite low.
Decent enough, quality enough.
It
to
was
at least get
decent
your proof
enough.
of
I mean,
concept.
it wasn't like 310 GSM black core, like high quality. That's what these are. Linen finish, coated.
Yeah.
It's not that, but it's pretty good. And again, it's just some people, if you just want to get your idea out there
Yeah.
and you want to see it, why not? Like, don't commit yourself to something that you're just not going to achieve. Because I would hate for somebody to have a goal and have an idea and then just not reach it. You can always do another campaign later on, version 2.0 or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you could do that, but
It kind of depends on what your product
what
is
your
as
product
well,
is.
you know?
Absolutely. 100%.
But expansions, there's
I had to spend like $200 for
One.
prototype.
Right. Right.
2 prototypes, sorry. Yeah,
okay.
but it was like,
I
you
get
have
it.
boxes, you got cards, you got boards, you got
Yeah.
tokens, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
It adds up, and it's just it's a whole nother world, manufacturing, trying to figure out who the best is, like who to go with, that kind of stuff. I had lined up different manufacturers, and depending on where the campaign was going to land, luckily we funded quite a bit more than I was expecting, so I went with a better manufacturer, which has less, the cost is lower per product, so that was a lot better, saved us some money, made us some, that kind of thing. But you have to do your research out there, and there's lots of good resources online for, in like the game design world, and like Jamie Stegmaier, James Mack, they all have like lots of website and blog content that gives you lots of sources for manufacturing and prototyping,
There's
all that
quite
kind
a
of
bit
stuff.
in Board Game Geek too. I'm
Yeah.
Huge.
surprised,
Huge.
especially with game development
Yeah.
things and stuff like that. What are some of the things the average person could do though, who doesn't have like your skill sets, but wants to get into Kickstarter? What are some of the things you think that should be kind of pretty straightforward or easy for somebody to be able to do regarding a Kickstarter campaign?
Well, the one thing you're going to want right off the bat is like concept stuff, right? Concept pictures, the design, like for the page, like I'm going to call that web design, right?
Okay.
And so one website you can use is, is like Fiverr. Fiverr is really awesome. There's some good people out there. If you find them, again, you got to find the good ones, and work with them to get some good graphics, because you're not gonna know what your list is right now, right up front, but you are gonna need that to convey the message, to do your social media posting, to show people the concept, to try and spark some reviews or some interest. It all comes down to graphics design, like honestly, and it's gotta look good.
For people who don't know, that's like
With
a
two
web,
R's at the
web
end.
kind
Yeah.
of freelancer.
Yeah, it is. Because $5 is a big deal to some people in other parts of the world, and they can make a living off of that. That is really what it comes down to, and there's some very talented people available.
No, I've used Fiverr.
You are going to be challenged more when you don't have a friend or somebody local that you're working with that you can just sit down and have this conversation and say, this is what I want. It's gonna greatly complicate. Like when I discuss things with my factory in China, it's actually mentally stressful and challenging for me to convey a message, because we use a lot of slang and terms and stuff that might not mean the same thing to them that it does to us. And so you're actually dumbing down your words and your communications and using lots of pictures. I was attaching pictures with arrows and circling things and saying, no, this is wrong, and these margins are wrong, and it's printed wrong. And you're going back and forth with another time zone on the other side of the world, trying to talk to somebody who has a different vocabulary. It's not that their English is not good with some of them. It's that we use different ways to convey messages and terms, and we say, faster, cheaper, and that might mean something different to them. You know what I mean?
May as well just learn Mandarin.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I'll just do that in a day or two.
Yeah.
And you're making phone calls at 3 a.m. or whatever, probably.
Well, yeah, emails.
Emails.
Or
and all that
they
stuff.
like Skype and stuff like that too. Yeah, but I was doing emails and pictures. I liked having a paper trail.
I'd say artwork is by far the biggest thing to get people drawn into something, and so you're gonna do as well as if you need to invest into that, right? Like that is a very valuable thing to invest in, some good artwork getting done, right? Or unique style or whatever, if that's not something you're capable of doing, or and then the other thing I would say is just getting it out there and creating some type of team or community that's like, I'm going to back the game, I like it already. Like that's like the number one thing that I read or see with failing Kickstarters is like, I got this idea, I put it out there, I have like 2 backers, right?
Yeah, it's always
Like-
sad when you see somebody with something sort of interesting and they, $10.
I would say you have
10,000.
to, and if I were to guess, I would say you have to have at least 10 to 20% of your goal already. Like
Within the
with
first-
you need
before.
you need people to
Committed.
fulfill 10 to 20% of your
Yeah.
goal before
Yeah.
you launch.
Absolutely.
Or
Yeah.
else it's just going to appear to people that you're not.
That psychology
Yeah.
thing again. Ooh,
Yeah.
I don't know. If
Well,
I'll-
the snowball effect, the getting it going, absolutely. And some people just don't want to be first. It's chicken egg situation, right?
Okay, so yeah, build up your
Well, we call it
commitments.
list building initially. It's not just your initial backers, but list building is a huge enterprise. And even if your campaign fails, the list that you got out of that is gold.
It's just interested parties, right?
Yeah.
What I did was I went to local conventions here in Edmonton and showed off my game, my prototypes. We did a couple play nights at some of the board game cafes. Did one here actually, I think. And just to get people getting excited about it, seeing it online in different ways. Like my friends helped a lot with that. So it was just like exposure. We had a website made up, way before the Kickstarter that people could visit and see some of the visuals and what the game kind of looks like visually. And so then I had an email sign up there. So I think I had like 200 emails before I even launched, right, of people that were interested in the campaign. You got to create that before you start.
Absolutely.
I mean, you did Thunderclap?
Yes, I
Yeah.
did Thunderclap as well. A few years ago, it was really good.
Yeah.
I found it was so-so on my last one.
Yeah.
But Thunderclap, the idea is that people can pre-connect their social media account, like Twitter and Facebook, so that the day that you launch, a message gets posted automatically on all of their social accounts with a link to your campaign, basically. And so that helps with the snowball effect. I'm not saying that it wasn't worth it. It's still worth it, and I would still do it. Thunderclap is a really good thing and you have to start that a month or 2 months before your campaign launch date is going to occur to get people to connect into it so that on that day it's going to go and send out that social post, right?
Another big thing that we did for marketing was just like sending out press releases to websites that are blogging about board games with lots of visual content for them to use. Sending out like a message, just like different Facebook groups or admins from Facebook groups to talk about it. Video reviews, right? They're going to post on their channel, which is going to I have a YouTube video from many years ago that got me a whole bunch of followers. So like I just posted a video of my game on that because you just have to get it out there as much as you can, right? And the cool thing about Kickstarter is they track a lot of that.
Oh, yeah.
So they track traffic in an interesting
where
way.
they're
So
coming
like
from.
if you send out a custom referral link to people, Kickstarter will track that traffic. So like if I send a link to say a board game website, it'll show me on Kickstarter if I got a backer from that website.
Oh, nice.
Like linked from that website, which is really neat. It's interesting to see where you're getting your interest from, and
then
some of
focus on it or whatever, maybe.
we sent out. It's mostly my wife, but we sent out press releases to like hundreds of websites and blogs and stuff, and it was just neat to see that some of those blogs got me like 5-6 backers, right?
Yeah.
Like it was worth the time to put it in, right? I mean, a lot of them didn't even post about it, right? Like just small potatoes a little bit. They're like, you're not going to post about that. But the ones that some of that did got me some backers, which was great.
Yeah.
Did you make use of much of that kind of
that
outreach?
panel we absolutely. And interestingly, when you first get it started, the first 24 hours, it's going to be traffic that you are sending to your campaign. But after that, when the dust settled, I would say on average, my campaign's 50% to 2/3 is from what we call the Kickstarter discovery tool. It was people finding out about my campaign on Kickstarter that represent that much of my, the funds that I raised. But that would have never happened had I not actually driven people hard to that campaign page. And being able to measure what was working and what wasn't.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And if a thread would take off like on Reddit or BGG, that's where you're going to find out about it.
Yeah.
And then you're going to be able to jump on it and maybe help it out or comment or have your social influencers say,
have
hey
the-
guys,
the-
something just happened.
Oh, we did
I'm
that.
getting stuff big time from BGG right now. Can you guys jump in?
Yeah, come on, Horde. We need
Yeah.
to descend upon
Yeah.
the internet.
Exactly.
To the internets.
Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff at your disposal. I think one thing I'd like people to take away is basically that you're not going to run an idea on Kickstarter and it's not going to be a profitable situation. You're not going to make money on this, especially if you don't take into consideration the time and energy that you're going to put into this. This is because you would like to feel proud of having your idea come to fruition and become a legacy piece. Like I've got something with all my products that 50 years from now, my grandkids are going to be able to say, hey, look at that. It's got, it's a legacy piece. It's something that's always going to be around. And that's the cool part. It's not because you've got ideas of grandeur that you're going to be making.
Retire somewhere,
that's not the case. Not going to happen.
No, but like you said, it's a great portfolio thing. You've got a few of these under your belt now. You are maybe going to springboard off Carthage into selling some of your games to the players and actually make a bit more from that.
And I mean, if you're looking at maybe your first project or your second project, like as investing into the community and getting your name and your brand out there, then eventually, if you create good product, then you're going to have games that people are excited about. Like there's some great stories on Kickstarter where a project was made, it was funded at like $30,000-$40,000, but then the game was really popular, people loved it, so they made another Kickstarter to reprint, right?
That's
and
right.
millions of dollars later, like
those,
so that's the whale that he's talking about, right? And maybe that'll happen. But at the end of the day, if your dream is to create a product, and this is, especially in the board game realm, this is the best way to do it with the least amount of risk.
Well, it does sound like it's still a difficult thing to do now, especially that the bar has been raised by larger publishers and other things like that. But it sounds like there's still a lot of tools and a lot of good examples to make use of to help anybody basically put together a fairly decent Kickstarter campaign.
Yeah.
Do you agree that's...
Oh, it is. And even if your campaign fails, I've seen a number of campaigns go and relaunch and become successful on Take-Two.
Yeah.
And you've got your list, because your list is that much bigger at that point, right?
Nick can talk about that.
Yeah, exactly, Nick.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Fongo Mongo
Mongo Games.
Him next week,
I
believe.
And he did that, and he was very successful on his relaunch.
And he's got a totally different background. It'll be interesting to hear about him, because he started off designing, and he doesn't have half the chops you guys do, I think. But he's had a fairly successful.
He did, absolutely, and a great product, and it worked. It came to fruition.
Yeah. It must be fun getting out there, though, like you said, to conventions and stuff, and showing people your game and stuff.
It's nice getting the feedback for the most part when it's positive. And
Yeah.
it's fun.
Have you had any?
No, it's mostly been positive. It's fun seeing people excited and laughing and enjoying your game and showing it, like it's the whole Kickstarter project and showing your game is a little bit of like, vulnerability. It's
Of
like,
course,
it's like, this is my
something out
dream.
there.
I'm putting it, especially for Kickstarter. It's like, this is my dream. I'm putting it on the internet.
Yeah.
Either have me or don't a little bit. Right. So then when you get it, it's like affirmation. I was saying, like, we're talking about the kind of the emotional toll that it takes Kickstarter, because you have all these people that are pledging for your dream, and every time that pledge comes in, it's like a little bit of endorphins, right?
Yeah.
But then you also have cancellations, and it's like severe depression when that happens, right? It's like it's like this high and low, And we're like 3-4 months done our campaign, and I'm still like, shaking sometimes going to the Kickstarter page to look at it, like it's a bit of a wild ride, which is, it's fun overall. It's stressful, but it's also fun.
Yeah.
And like I said, when we were doing it with friends and they were excited, it was just a hoot to do all together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've always had this dream of putting together books and stuff like that, and then going on tour with them and speaking about them and that sort of thing. But I mean, I got plenty on my plate as it is right now. So how did you guys fit?
Actually,
this whole
you
thing
just
into
commented
your
on it right there. You got to make sure that you have a team. You need people. You can't. This cannot be done as a one-man show.
Yeah, I gotta say. I mean, because you both have your own firms to run and everything, and then this, which sounds like a full-time job.
Yeah, but it's fun.
Yeah. Sometimes in like graphic and web design, you're like, doing the jobs that pay bills, right?
Yeah.
But then you're doing jobs that are exciting and creative, right? And those are the ones that
there's
keep you
definitely
going.
a lot of passion that goes into this,
Yeah.
and you have an end product at the end of the day.
And if your passion speaks through in what you're creating, then the backers are going to be excited about it as well, right? Like I got that a lot in my comment section, was like people were responding at how like excited that I was about the product in different ways, and we had lots of comments, and there's a great community over time because of that, right? Because you could see the passion and the excitement that I had for it as well.
Yeah, as we talk about influencers and stuff, people are really a lot better. Their shill radar and their way, they can really tell if somebody's actually into something or if they're just peddling something.
I think if you want to, practice skills in like marketing, design, manufacturing. There's lots of human resources work, like talking with backers all the time. Like it's like there's many different career opportunities that could come from running a Kickstarter.
So what do you do then if you see somebody bring a resume into your office and you see, they actually had a funded Kickstarter?
That would carry a lot of weight with it. Absolutely. There's no doubt about it.
Because you know what they've been through.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we'll leave it at that. Where's my little closing thing? Any I know you guys have put in a few things where you said, like, if I could impress upon somebody one really important thing. You mentioned a couple things here, but is there anything else you'd like to mention about your experiences at Kickstarter, speaking to somebody who might be watching this and is seriously considering getting into it? Anything you can think of other than...
I'd just say think through every detail. Like, try to imagine it's not just the campaign. This is pre and post. Like, this is going to consume your life for whatever the period of time is, and you've got to be committed. And things are going to happen. Like, that's the one thing that my comments and my backers would say is I always responded immediately, like generally within like an hour. Always. If there was a question, a concern, or whatever, and if they have a problem tracking a package, they didn't get it, it's damaged, they got a question, I always responded. Didn't matter what it was. And that goes a long way. And so, but you were committing your time that you're going to be doing that for that period of time, especially when the campaign is occurring and when your fulfillment is actually in sequence.
That might turn a hater into, wow, David got back to me and just shipped me something new.
I converted a number of negative ones into positive people just by the mere fact that I responded and dealt with whatever their concern was.
Okay, so response is a big one, and be prepared to go into the long haul.
Yeah, and financially, it doesn't end like when the campaign is done and you got these funds. Like it's just, there's stuff that's gonna come up. Your unanticipated, contingencies. They're there.
But I mean, you must learn a lot from each campaign. You've had a few now.
Every single one, you learn something, and you're like, "But geez, I should have done this. I would change that." Like, there's no magic formula. Okay. As Luke indicated, you can tackle this a number of different ways and be successful however you want to do it. I've seen some pages that didn't have a lot of graphics and look plain and simple, but people loved the concept or the idea, and it just somehow magically got its own traction. And it's hard. Like, what convinces somebody that they want to back your campaign when they look at it? They need generally speaking, we call it an emotional connection. They got to say, wow, I like this. I want to be first. I need to have that. I like this guy. It's a great deal. Like, there's got to be a reason.
All right, final thoughts?
Yeah, I would just once again say, I remember reading about how much you needed a community behind you of backers, and I was like, well, I mean, if it looks great, people will back it. But then I was amazed at how much more influential it was to have all those people that were excited, that were commenting, that were influencing in different ways. Like, it was really good for our campaign, but it also was just like good for the emotional health of me, because I had all these people being like, telling me positive things and helping in the positive direction of the camp, versus like going down kind of this negative hole if we have cancellations or we're not reaching certain goals, So like I think that community of people that are excited about your game prior to Kickstarter is so important.
Yeah, and then, I mean, how cool is it to have your own horde of, like...
I know. Minions.
I love that idea. Minions, yes.
I need your own minions.
Go forth and spread the good word.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, we'll leave it at that. Thanks for coming in today and sharing your stories, revealing your coveted secrets. Hopefully somebody gets a good idea, better idea now about Kickstarter, what's involved. it sounds like you were saying up and down, but if you put in some work and follow a few things, use some of the resources and tools available online, it's something that can be done. Anybody who's watching, feel free to leave a comment below below the doobly-doo. I got it right this time. Please don't kill me, Matt Colville. You know who Matt Colville is? He's one of my YouTube heroes. I hope just one day I'll get a like from Matt Colville.
Yeah.
Anyway, leave comments about your own Kickstarter experiences down below. And thanks again to our guests, David Papp and Luke Seinen, and we'll see you next time.